So my name is Julia Streets and a very warm welcome to episode 7 of Metaverse What Matters, filmed right here in the Metaverse and available on YouTube. So it is available for everybody. And as always, I'm joined by Dr. Catriona Wallace, who is the founder of the Responsible Metaverse Alliance. It is a social movement and an international cause committed to supporting the development of the metaverse and the virtual world. So think about the responsibility from the perspective of design, deployment, safety, culture, inclusion, operations, and function. So, Kat, how are you? Great to see you, as always. Great outfit, by the way.
Yeah, thanks, Julia. Great to see you as well. Very happy to be here.
So I wonder if I could just take a brief moment to introduce myself. My name is Julia Streets. I'm the founder and the CEO of a business development, marketing, communications consultancy with clients all over the world, but also I'm a professional host, and I spend my time speaking to leaders in both the virtual and the real world about what's top of their mind at the moment. And definitely technology and definitely the metaverse is on their plates at the moment. Now, in previous episodes, which you can go back and see on YouTube, we've talked about regulation, we've talked about best practices for creators, designers, platform providers, and we've talked about some of the challenges and realities of bridging these different worlds, virtual worlds, digital worlds, physical worlds, and it's all about working together in the best interests of humanity. So now I'd like to hone in on one particular area. We're going to get a little bit deeper in this episode because we've talked about policy, we've talked about regulation, and we've also talked to a degree about the conversation regarding standards. And I was particularly interested to read a white paper that was published by Standards Australia in May this year. And it's called, fittingly, Metaverse Standards. And it lists a number of the bodies that are already looking at this area. And I think of, for example, the Metaverse Standards Forum, XRSI, the World Web Consortium, and actually including the World Economic Forum. There are 10 bodies that are already looking at this. So I suppose, Kat, I'd love to get your thoughts on when there are so many organizations looking at standards, couldn't you argue that this is already in hand? Why do we need to pay more attention here?
So one of the challenges that we have is around there's very little regulation, if any regulation that exists for the metaverse. And similarly, we've had artificial intelligence for 70 years and we still don't have any real significant regulation or legislation for AI. So what we're seeing now is a number of standards bodies doing some work on creating standards for the metaverse in order for these to be precursors to regulation and policy to get ahead of when the metaverse is really here in full force, which we imagine is within the next 3 to 5 years. So it's a little bit different, Julia, to what we've seen before where policymakers try to retrofit into Web 2.0 and social media regulation and standards. We're trying to get ahead of the game, and there are at least 10 bodies who are trying to look at different aspects of standards for the metaverse.
And I'm curious to know, when we've talked about the bridging of these different worlds, is where does the conversation about standards play? And when we're talking about standards, we're talking about, the detailed ISO standards that exist so many, like, for example, take the world of transactions, that there is some standard fields and components to every message that gets sent. Talk to us a bit more about, what do you mean by standards and what role does it play in making sure that there is this interoperability, all for, in the interests of humanity?
Yes. So one of the first things to recognize is when we talk about the worlds that we live in now, we have the physical world, the digital world, and the virtual world, which we are in here now. And when we think of the virtual world, think of it as almost a replica of the physical and the digital world, plus so much more. So when we think about the areas that regulation and policy and standards must be applied to, it's so large. And in the Metaverse Standards Forum, who we're a dear partner of, there's at least 35 categories, significant categories of standards that could apply to the metaverse. So it's a huge area, and when we at the Responsible Metaverse Alliance start to think about it, we really want to focus in on the concept of individuals being targeted and manipulated in the metaverse. That's the area of standards that we are most focused on.
So that's real sort of governance frameworks, governance standards in order to hone in these 35 particular areas.
Well, more than governance, it's actually specific standards for how you would code, how you would do different parts of the platforms. Because remember, Metaverse is made up of at least 5 or 6 big technologies coming together. So augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, the internet itself, cloud platforms, many other smaller technologies, but at least those are the big infrastructure platforms. So all of these coming together also need that, and these platforms need to be, these technology pieces need to be interoperable. Then there's multiple levels of standards from a technical perspective right through to, as you said, a governance perspective.
This is brilliant because actually I can't think of anybody else in the world I could have a conversation about standards in, get deeply technical in terms of kind of actually what they are and also their application at the highest level as well. Paint us a picture, if you would, of some of the risks if they're not addressed.
So we believe there are significant risks to the metaverse. So if we think of the metaverse as being a construct made up of virtual worlds, and I think we've said before in our earlier episodes, there's at least 160 virtual worlds that operate within the metaverse. And think about these as new worlds where there is little regulation, policies, guidelines, frameworks, no government, no policing, no governance, other than what the tech providers themselves are able to give. And we've not, in my opinion, seen very good ethical practices or standards that really protect individuals to the degree they need to be in what we know as social media or Web 2.0. So we now, in a metaverse environment where it's fully immersive, fully persistent and fully present, know that the risks are going to be so much more, even unimaginable, the risks that the metaverse would bring. So hence, standards that are a precursor to policy and regulation are absolutely required.
And who do you see as most at risk if this work isn't supported and continued?
Well, definitely it is children. So at the moment, we believe there are around 500 million active users of metaverse and metaverse related platforms. Some of the statistics are that 85% of that 500 million people are young people under the age of 18, which makes sense, right? Because a lot of the metaverse technologies have come from things such as Fortnite, or games such as Fortnite. We have Roblox and Minecraft, which are early precursors of an immersive metaverse. So it is the games of children that are really leading into the creation of the metaverse. And so I believe it is children who are most at risk.
And it's really fascinating because you talk there about children being a really priority citizen group, if you want to call it that. But it's a huge remit, and I'm sort of trying to get my head around where to begin. And you talk about these 35 different categories. So which category should we focus on first, and who should focus on addressing them?
Right. Well, we at the Responsible Metaverse Alliance partnered with Standards Australia to do an analysis of what are all the standards bodies that are working at the moment, and then what is the existing regulation, and then what would we feel would be the most pertinent area of standards for the metaverse. And what our team, particularly led by Dr. Lewis Rosenberg, our chief scientist, came up with is the concept of standards needed for the targeted influence and manipulation of individuals in the metaverse. And so I'll say that again, the targeted influence and manipulation of individuals in the metaverse. So what that would mean is either having AI powered or human powered virtual spokespeople or actors in the metaverse that target individuals in order to, or could be potentially sell them a product, or could potentially be to sell them a particular doctrine, potentially extremist values or notions, or recruit them into some crime organization, or anything at all. So within that concept of targeted influence and manipulation, there were 4 subcategories of standards that we've recommended. And these are the right for authenticity in the metaverse. So that would mean that if you, Julia, were a human avatar, I'd understand that you were human as another avatar experiencing you, or if you were an AI-driven avatar, I would know authentically that you are not a human, that you are perhaps placed by a brand or a company as an AI avatar. So the right to authenticity, the right to emotional privacy, because we now have headsets such as we're wearing, the Meta 3 that are out, Apple's release when that comes out in 2024, that will monitor our emotions through monitoring our physical and physiological responses to things. The right to behavioral privacy, so that is, we will behave certain ways in the metaverse. These hardware and software track all that, so we're asking for behavior. And then the fourth one is the right to human agency, so that humans should be able to have agency, power, and be able to control their own data and their own actions and behaviors in the metaverse without that being controlled by, say, the large tech players. So they are the areas that, and I can even tell by the tone of my voice, like I'm so focused on this and concerned about this, particularly when it comes to children. So if we had those standards, it would be a safer place.
And how optimistic are you that, having set out the 35, then gone deeper into the targeted influence and manipulation of the metaverse, and then these 4 different subcategories as well, how confident are you and optimistic are you that they'll be tackled quickly? And then where, I guess, would you focus next?
So very interesting. I've been absolutely impressed and delighted with the impetus and the interest that we have from Standards Australia and the Australian federal government in taking what we've done in the initial discussion and white paper around standards into a next level of project, and that's already starting to happen. So we may see some great leadership come out of countries such as Australia, and New Zealand is also very advanced on this, where we normally would look to perhaps Europe or the US to be leading everything. We may see that some of the standards come in an easier way out of some of the smaller countries. And one of the reasons for that, I believe, is because countries like Australia now recognise that unless we do something, we'll become a backwater country where Silicon Valley entrepreneurs come to make money. That's what we're faced with. And we're faced with all sorts of other national risks unless we are leading the charge in regulating the metaverse.
So let me flip that around the other way, which is, focusing in Australia, having the impetus to do that, having a really clear focus and almost like a kind of a pathway to follow. What does that mean for the rest of the world?
So definitely a lot of the work that we're doing in standards in the metaverse, policing in the metaverse, we are sharing that internationally. So absolutely there is great collaboration and collegiality between policymakers across the world. So I hope and believe that once one country has created standards, that they can just be passed on to other countries to adopt, and then eventually, possibly, there'll be some international standards. That would be the hope.
And it'll be really fascinating to see how the international community regards your work in Australia, and then also adopts the best that coming out of it, and then also how how Australia takes a leadership position, as you say, in terms of the vision for the future. Really fascinating. I have to say, standards is one of my favorite topics. A lot of the audience may think that it's very dry and it's very technical, but actually it's so important, and it's been wonderful to just hear you talk about why it matters, how to approach such a huge challenge, how to break that down, and then also to know that there are people day by day focusing on this area as well. It's phenomenal. So standards is one of my favorite topics, and I love the fact that we've taken it from the highest level down into the technical detail, and I hope that's been useful for the audience. One of the things that I love about this show is we have a hashtag called #AskCat, where you can post a question and ask us anything. And a lot of people also catch me at various events and ask me questions as well. The question I'd love to bring in on your behalf into this conversation is whether you think that the large global organizations are engaging with your work, and if they are, is it sufficient?
So when we talk about large global organizations, I guess we've got a couple of different sides of the picture there. So one would be the tech giants who are largely leading the creation of the metaverse technologies. There would be the smaller startups and creatives who are also creating products and applications for the metaverse. And then we've got the brands, so the organizations, be they private sector or public sector, who are starting to think about the metaverse. So let's break all those down. So at the moment, for the Responsible Metaverse Alliance, we don't allow any membership from the large tech companies. And that is because we want our conversation not to be swayed or led by the large tech companies. So at this stage, we don't engage with them. We will engage with them in the future when we feel we're ready and we've built enough of a momentum to have a similar type of power base as they do. So that was a purposeful statement, and we do get a bit of flack from the tech companies from that. We do engage with the creators, and we've already done a creators think tank, so helping the smaller tech players in the metaverse field who are building tech know how to do it responsibly. And we have a beautiful partnership with an organization called XR Guild that also creates standards for and principles for the creators. Then with government, we've been impressed with how many governments are stepping forward and starting to engage with the type of work we're doing. We've already partnered with an organisation called the Gradient Institute to write the metaverse strategy for the New South Wales government in Australia. And that's available to share freely. It's freely online to share with other governments. And then on the brand side of it, so the private sector organisations, also we're starting to see majority of sort of the top tier organizations starting to put some small investment into metaverse related strategies. And we have organizations such as Accenture and PwC who are already in the metaverse. We have companies in Australia like Lendlease who are in the metaverse. We know all the large fashion brands are in the metaverse. The sporting brands are in the metaverse. And so it'll be a little bit slower for your average insurance company perhaps to join the metaverse, but we know most of these big organizations are doing metaverse strategies currently.
And I know you said in previous episodes that the key is to get in, to start testing, to start trying, have a clear strategy and build your policies as well. So tell me, as you look ahead the next sort of few months to the end of the year, here we are sort of middle of 2023 recording this, what's coming up for you?
So we are going to be doing more work with creating standards. So, and it's funny that you said that, Jules, because I'm an ex-AI entrepreneur. I would have cringed at having a conversation about standards previously, but I absolutely know, as you said, that these are critical and we'll get better innovation within guidelines of standards. So we will continue to work with standards. We also have mentioned a few times doing policing in the Metaverse think tank. So we've had one, we'll do 2 more policing in the Metaverse think tanks, working with international players such as Interpol and the Australian Federal Police. And then the other key area that we're really focused on will be educators in the Metaverse, because it is our view that given we know that of the 500 million Metaverse users, 85% of them are under the age of 18, the parents don't seem to know a lot about metaverse yet, but the teachers and principals do. So we actually think a really key part of the metaverse going well is engaging with educators and assisting them know how to particularly guide children through safe use of the metaverse.
And we've had some cracking engagement from the audience, particularly from educators, very keen to share this content with their students. And to that we say freely. That's the reason why we do this. It's why it's filmed in the metaverse, so you get a sense of how you can live, work and play in the metaverse, but also it's available for everybody. So thank you, as always, for all your thoughts. This kind of closes out our first season. We've had 7 episodes, starting with just understanding what on earth the metaverse is, why it matters, and all matters metaverse. We've broken that down through the various pillars of the metaverse, or the Responsible Metaverse Alliance. And then now we're even getting deeper into much more technical conversations about some of the dynamics that matter, the individuals and the groups and the communities that are coming together, and also what this means on a global scale. Cat, it's been a great first season. Thank you so much for all your time. I know you're really busy.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Julia. There could be no better place in the metaverse that I'd rather be, and there'd be no better subject than talking about how do we build a responsible metaverse. And I think we probably should do a high 10 to close out the first series.
I think we should. Let's do it. That's 1, that's 5, and a 10. Love it. Let's do it one more time. We're going to get that absolutely spot on. Here we go. Yeah, and that is when we talk about sort of immersive technologies and the whole thing about persistence, and is about feeling really connected. And so you're in Sydney, I'm in London, and it is just, we do feel really connected. It's extraordinary. So, well, listen, I just want to take a moment to do a couple of things as we close out the season. One is to thank the production team behind the scenes who have worked incredibly hard to bring this to you. I hope you've really enjoyed it, because my second thanks goes to you, the audience, for following us, for sharing, for all your engagement. And we do want to know your ideas as we start planning into series 2. So remember, there's a hashtag AskCat. Follow us on YouTube, and we really look forward to your contributions as we move forward with the next season. I've been Julia Streets, and as always, thank you for watching Metaverse What Matters. And until next time, goodbye.